So if you need a VPN, go Nord. Use nordvpn.com/Kimber to get a huge discount off your Nord VPN plan plus 4 additional months for free. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the show notes. Protect your computer like a cricketer protects its nether region with NordVPN today. Name and job title, please.
Dan Lipke, writer of The 100 Funniest Moments in Australian Cricket.
Can you explain what this book is and why you've forced yourself onto my podcast?
Well, the book is, as you may be able to guess from the title, it is a countdown of the 100 funniest moments in Australian cricket. So from the 100th funniest moment all the way down to the number 1 funniest moment. And I burst onto your podcast in order to plug it.
So usually I would read the book and I said to you, send me through a chapter. And you did. You actually sent me through a link. But when I went through the list, I was like, oh, I don't need to do any research on this. This is my life, right? Like,
Yes.
This is easy. So let us start with one that I think, funny, someone brought this up to me the other day just randomly, which just shows you how it has never gone away, which is Luke Pommersbach playing for Australia.
Yeah, so that was one that, because I basically crowdsourced a lot of these. Like I had my own ideas, but I also said, Twitter, tell me what are the funniest moments, and people gave me thousands of them, and I'd completely forgotten about this one. And then as soon as somebody said, I was like, yes, of course. So he basically just showed up to the ground to watch the game, and somebody got injured. I can't even remember who got injured now. It's in the book. Read the book, you'll find out.
I will tell you. You tell the story because I think that's a funny part of it as well. But I want you to tell the rest of it.
Yeah. So, and they basically said, "Oh shit, we need an extra player." So they somehow worked out that Pommersbach was at the ground, and they said, "You come down here to the dressing room." They gave him an Australian kit. On he ran, not 12th man, not substitute fielder or anything. This was his international debut, and he had a bit of a hit with Andrew Simons at the other end, ran around in the field for a bit, had a grand old day, and that was essentially it for his career.
Yeah, exactly. And he had a tragic career, and
Yes.
he's had a really tricky life since then. And yet his debut is one of the funniest things that ever happened. So you've obviously forgotten the bit from the book. Brad Hodge hurt his back.
Unlucky Brad Hodge, yes. That makes sense.
Hurt his back putting trousers on, which has to be one of the greatest injuries in international cricket. And I might be wrong, and you probably did more research on this than me, but my memory was that Pommersbach is like eating a pie or something when they come and find him, right? Like he's bedded in, he's all but got his beer ready for the day, and then suddenly, and he has to send his brother to his house to get his kit or something.
He had to borrow boots off somebody. And the other funny thing was, at the time, he was suspended from playing for Western Australia because he'd, misbehaved during some, trip. And they said, all right, you're not allowed to play. And so he's just off to the cricket. And then they say, all right, here you come. Have a run around for Australia instead. So that was a nice loophole there.
It's funny. Yeah, it's funny how often that, as I said, that one keeps coming up. This other one is something that's not mentioned a lot, but is used a lot in comedy shows and comes up quite a bit, which is John Howard bowling. Now, the caveat here is that John Howard was probably slightly older than the average bowler.
Yes.
But he had gone on and on, Dan, telling us all about how he was this proper cricket. What was the cricket tragic? He basically invented that phrase.
Yes.
Did he invent that phrase? I think he did.
I don't think I'd heard it before he said it. Yeah.
Yeah. And he went on and on telling us what a cricket tragic he was. And then the first time we get a chance to see him bowl, he bowls. I mean, I don't want to say a double bouncer because that's unfair because the ball almost lands at his foot.
Yeah, it doesn't get to the other end.
Does it even make it to the other end?
It basically just bounces him straight up in front of him. And then the follow-up is he tried it again and he basically did the same thing a second time. And then they said, his mind has said, all right, that's probably enough of this photo shoot.
And also because of I think he tries to bowl off spin. I think he was an off spinner, and you could kind of see his hands, almost like the ball gets stuck in his hand a little bit.
Yeah.
But the funnier thing is that, of course, he got massively involved in the Murali scandal on being an expert on and talking about off spin and how Murali was chucky and everything. So much so that he was supposed to be the ICC president. Or whatever role, chairman, I can't remember which one it was.
That's right. I forgot
one of the reasons he didn't get it was because of that. So he is literally like this guy who is such a cricket tragic. He makes up his own name. Is so aghast by everything Murali does, and literally can't get the ball more than 2 meters from his body when he bowls it. Yeah. It was disgusting. I mean, it is for people, especially for non-Australians on this podcast, if you haven't seen the Australian Prime Minister John Howard bowl this ball, it is worth doing it because for all the crimes he did against humanity, this is like top
This
3.
is the worst. Yeah. It's not a great moment in his political career, and it's such kind of an infamous moment in Australia. This is the cover of the book. Like it's John Howard on the cover is the cover of the book. So yeah, everyone in Australia knows this.
Is it illustrated or is it illustrated, or do you have a proper photo?
It's a proper photo of that particular moment. So yeah, the book's full of great photos. So that was one that they insisted on putting in there. So yes.
No, I mean, I definitely, as I said, it's one of those things that like it just seems to pop up in comedy shows all the time.
Yeah.
And like I've seen like Pakistani YouTube shows where they show it and they don't even know it's an Australian Prime Minister. They just think it's an old man bowling badly.
Yeah.
So I love that. It's so funny that it doesn't even need the full context. Mick Lewis. Now I haven't read this chapter, so I know why this is funny. But please take me through the Mick Lewis.
Well, I'm a little bit annoyed, of course, because in between when I wrote it and it went to the printers, Adam Zampa equaled him, and then of course he was well, it's still the worst bowling figures, equal worst bowling figures. I think the more runs have now been taken off the 10 overs, but still 0 for 113. So, and the great thing about Mick Lewis, as far as I was concerned, is he held this record for so long. Like when to come 2006 was when he did it. 2006, 2007, round about then, and the scoring rates have skyrocketed enormously. And it took until this year before someone could first match him in Adam Zampa, and then finally overtake him. And I just find that amazing that Ricky Ponting just stubbornly said, "Nah, I'm just going to keep bowling you. You're going to get your full 10 overs in. I'm defending 434. I don't give a shit. You're just going to keep bowling Mick Lewis." And that was that was very entertaining to me. Poor old Mick Lewis.
Also, probably not the worst bowling by an aged Victorian in South Africa in that period. Like Bryce McGain's is probably worse, but Mick Lewis is probably going to be remembered. Well, as you said, because it was the record, it gets brought up a lot more. Anytime anyone starts to go for runs, Mick Lewis's numbers get flashed up on the screen for a long time.
And of course, the
other interesting thing.
Sorry, I was just going to say the great thing about Mick Lewis is with that. He beat the record because for the first, I don't know, what is it, half a dozen years of ODIs, there's 60 overs. So people had 12 overs and they still couldn't match Mick Lewis for a long time. So, yeah, that was really good too.
Well, the other thing I was going to say is he played 9 games, right? And yet in that 9 games, he happens to accidentally be involved in the highest scoring game in the history of ODI cricket, where someone is going to end up with the worst figures, most probably in that game, right? And as you said, Ponting doesn't really have a choice. He can't go to part-timers, right? Like everyone's going for runs in that game. But the other thing is, like, because he's a fascinating cricketer as well. I remember when I was about 17, 18, all my friends who played club cricket in the northern suburbs would say there's a guy bowling 100 miles an hour in suburban cricket.
Right.
And, when you hear that, you're just like, good one. Right, yeah, whatever. And then I started playing for Coburg, and we played a practice game against Northcote, and I think it was Mick Lewis's first season. And we watched him bowl, and we were like, oh, no, he really can bowl at this pace. And he was like maybe 26 or 27.
Right.
So, and I don't think he becomes a professional until maybe 26 or 27. So he's got this incredible backstory that, like, more like what you would expect of a Pakistani or a Sri Lankan fast bowler who's plucked from nowhere.
Yeah.
He then makes it. But then the other ODI, I don't know if it was his first ODI, where he had to defend like 6 runs in the last over against New Zealand and won the game. Like maybe it wasn't 6, but he had to defend something really, really good. So he has, in 9 games and only 7 ODIs, 2 of them were T20s, but in 7 ODIs, he basically wins the game for Australia and then ends up with the worst figures ever, and then goes on to be the bowling coach for Victoria and gets caught live on camera dragging the ball on concrete and tampering with the ball. Like, I mean, his arc is just absolutely amazing. But because he's from the northern suburbs of Melbourne, I had to mention him, of course. Now, we've talked about a politician that neither of us like. We've talked about 2 cricketers with very strange backstories, actually, now come to think about Poppers Batch and Mick Lewis. Let's go back to some old school stuff here, because this is a really good one. Warwick Armstrong and the 2 overs in a row. And as great as this is, you could have probably done about 7 or 8 Warwick Armstrong stories.
Yeah. This was basically my policy writing the book was, because I had such a long list as it turned out, I generally grouped things together. So, there's only one person getting hit in the nuts, and then all the others are like, these are subcategories of being hit in the nuts. So, so Warwick Armstrong, all his nonsense gets put into one thing. All of Marnus's nonsense gets put into one thing. But Warwick Armstrong, this was brilliant. So he bowled an over, England declared, and then there was this big argument about, no, you're not allowed to declare. And the rules, I don't even really understand the rules for when you could declare. It was like, if you're more than 150 on a third day of a game, that it was very convoluted. So they had a big discussion.
The old declaration laws. The old declaration laws are really weird, because also you couldn't declare on day 1, I think, for a long period of time. And there were all these weird things before they just got to the point of, you can declare whenever you want. Let's just do it. You can declare behind if you want. We don't care anymore. Yeah,
so they had a big argument, and Warwick Armstrong saying, no, blah, blah, blah. And eventually they was like, all right, Australia, continue on. And he said, all right, I'm just going to bowl the next over. And it was only kind of at the end of the day, the scorers went, this dude bowled 2 overs in a row. It was just like, wonderful shithousery from the big ship.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think people understand how much he changed Australian cricket, because up until that point, like, Australia are the nice ones, and it's England who are the cheats and the arseholes, right? Like, Grace is the
putting the bails
might as
back
well
on
be an Australian cricketer.
Yeah,
and all that, running out Sammy Jones when he's gardening and all that sort of stuff, and sledging, kidnapping, which I know is also in your book, the kidnapping of Billy Midwinter and all that sort of stuff. But from Warwick Armstrong onwards, Australia are the arseholes.
Yeah.
And so the bowling 2 overs in a row is classic Warwick Armstrong, because I reckon he would have known. Right? I just think he's the sort of person would have known. But what about the other thing? Is it, and I haven't got this here, but I'm sure it's in that chapter as well. But the Les Ames thing, do you have where he bowls next to the pitch?
Tell me about this one.
Les Ames?
Tell me about this one.
So I think it was Les Ames's debut. And this changed the laws of cricket as well. It was so stupid. Les Ames came out to bat and took guard. And Warwick Armstrong, I can't remember how many minutes. I don't want to over-egg it, but for about 15 minutes, bowls warm-ups next to the pitch.
So the opposite of Angelo Matthews.
The complete opposite. Like, imagine Angelo Matthews came out to bat and the bowler just on the side wicket was bowling over and over again for no reason. And it was all mind games to get into Les Ames, and so they had to change it. So I think that's the point at where you couldn't bowl warm-up deliveries on the pitch anymore.
Right.
And also that the umpires could say, bowl the fucking ball, right?
Yeah.
But that was the sort of thing that Warwick Armstrong did over and over again in Australian cricket. And, reading newspapers out on the field to make a point and all that sort of stuff. Like, he was a properly hilarious thing. And also, because he wasn't exactly in peak cricket physical shape, was he?
No, he wasn't. No. This is you make me sad, because I only had 500 words to write on each of these topics, and there was so much I wanted to write on some of them, and it's just like, I've just got to get in and get out and get the basics out of here. So, But you could write whole books.
I think a whole comedy book on Warwick Armstrong would probably work, because of all the stuff he got up to. Let's go off to another one. So, I did the big special on Stuart Broad a while back. And,
I watched it avidly. Yes.
I knew you, of all people, I knew you would have been up there. But the one I didn't spend as much time on, but really affected me a lot at the time was the Stuart Broad sight screen.
Yes.
So take us through that. Adelaide Oval, Mitchell Johnson's on a tear. England have lost at the Gabba, getting smashed in Adelaide, have also got smashed in Uluru, well, not Uluru, Alice Springs in their warm-up. So they're in all sorts of trouble.
Yes.
And then Stuart Broad comes out, and what happens next?
So Stuart Broad comes out. Mitchell Johnson's in 2013-14 Mitchell Johnson mode. He has the big mo. He's terrorizing everybody. Stuart Broad comes out and quite sensibly does not want to face up to Mitchell Johnson. So he comes up with a reason not to, and that reason is something on the side screen. There's, he's claiming there's
it's like a bolt
glint
or
of
something,
sunlight.
isn't it?
Yeah, I think he's complaining about sun, glinting off. And so he points at that for a very long time. People are scurrying around trying to work out what the hell his issue is. And he complains and he stops and he looks again. And eventually it gets sorted out to his satisfaction. But again, this takes 8 minutes or so before he's eventually decided, right, this side screen, I can't keep going to this excuse anymore. I will have to face up to Mitchell Johnson. And of course, Mitchell Johnson comes in. First ball, Stuart Broad perfectly sensibly says, I'm getting out of the road of this ball, takes a step out and basically gets bowled behind his legs, crashes into the stump. Mitchell Johnson charges down, just like glaring at him. Stuart Broad's like, see you later. I've had enough of this. I'm gone. So, yeah, a fantastic moment. One of my very favourites.
A lot of people complain that I'm not a former cricketer and so that I don't really know the game. Well, you know what they can't claim? That I don't know desks. I've been using desks for years. I'm a collector of desks, old and new, and I'm sitting on a new one right now. I'm the Don Bradman of sitting at desks. So when I tell you that the E7 Pro next generation height adjustable desk from FlexiSpot is legit, this is like Michael Jordan talking to you about sneakers. This desk holds 160 kilograms. It is as stable as anything I've ever seen, and it has under-desk cable management. But really, the main skill here is that this desk rises and falls at the push of a button, and it moves super quick. And it has so many settings that remember your favorite heights. It really does it all. And I could not recommend the E7 Pro from FlexiSpot anymore, even though I am currently sitting on one of FlexiSpot's BS12 Pro multifunctional, adjustable, upgraded fabric, ergonomic chairs. My butt and computer have never been happier than when using one of FlexiSpot's products. So get over to their page right now for big savings.
So it was 6 minutes. It was a 6-minute golden duck where no one else faced the ball.
Yeah.
There wasn't a drinks break.
Yeah.
There wasn't a change of overs. Literally, he went out to take guard and it took him 6 minutes to face one ball and get bowled. So there's a funny addendum to that story, which is, I think after that innings, England have a real heart-to-heart because they know this is going horribly for them, right? And Graham Gooch is their batting coach. And Graham Gooch says to the to the tail enders, something along the lines of, guys, you've really got to support the top order better than you are at the moment, blah, blah, blah. And I don't know, I think it is Broad who says it, but Broad and Swan go, what are you talking about? We can't even see this coming at us. And if our top order can't face it, how the hell are we supposed to be? Yeah. And so, absolutely brilliant. You did say before that you combined a lot of funny moments into one section. I did notice Stuart Broad's name did seem to pop up in a few. You could, because you can't
get all the Stuart.
I mean, Stuart Broad is Warwick Armstrong of modern cricket, and we've seen all the shenanigans and we have all the memes, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm assuming you didn't even get a chance to mention that time he took his shoe off mid-over in order to get to the lunch break quicker. Like, there's no way you could keep all the Stuart Broad shithousery into 500 words. It's impossible.
It is completely impossible. And not even, 1,000 words or 1,500. I can't remember how many times I've got him in there. But yeah, I wrote, basically the precursor to this book was I did a countdown of the 40 funniest cricketers of all time. Stuart Broad was my number one, obviously. And basically, I just, and that was 6 years ago, 7 years ago. And he's even in his last test,
got funnier.
He's swapping bails around for no good reason, and it works. It's just Stuart Broad. He's going in because Johnny Bairstow got stumped, so he's deliberately saying in every time he puts his bat behind the crease. Magnificent comic hero. Beautiful man. I love him.
Who's on your list of 40? Who's your top 5 funniest? Do you remember?
Let me see if I could still do it. All right, so. I originally, played a bit of a trick and put Shane Watson as number one, and then Stuart Broad as number 2. But I came to my senses. So Watto, Stuart Broad, Inzamam.
That's a good one.
Yeah, just the runouts. I mean, made an art form out of the runouts. I think Ben Stokes was in there even very early on, and maybe it's Maxwell. I can't quite remember, but it's in that kind of vicinity. So yeah,
is Afridi quite high as well?
Afridi's definitely in there. Yeah, the man bit a cricket ball, so yeah, he's in there.
Yeah. I feel uncomfortable if Afridi wasn't there, but I think that's a pretty solid list. I think if you were
KP was right up there too.
Oh, that's a good one too. I think if you're adjusting for the history of cricket, then obviously, people like Warwick Armstrong.
Yeah.
Who was the Australian opener who he was it Sid Barnes who would sometimes when he was 12th man would dress up like a waiter
and
go out on the field. So there are some. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I think it's Sid Barnes.
Yeah.
And maybe there's another player who used to give exploding cigarettes and stuff like that. And then was it Alan Lamb and Ian Botham took when mobile phones first came out, gave the mobile phones to the umpire and then called the umpire during the game.
Yeah,
so
that sounds familiar.
I might misremember this, but yeah, Alan Lamb comes out to bat. And anyway, there's been some funny cricketers. That's my point there. We got rid of Stuart Broad. Actually, no. You've got the side screen,
and then you've got the edge,
and you've got the
non-walking
edge. Are they the only two? Is it just those two?
I think it's just those two. There may be a third one. He's omnipresent. Is Stuart Broad.
Another one that I think now is forgotten about, and it's fairly recent, and I was there, so maybe it's more in my mind than other people's mind. And was Matt Renshaw doing a poo?
Yes.
Can you take us through Matt Renshaw's poo?
Yeah. So this was where were they touring? India. It was India. That's right.
Oh,
it was
India.
Yeah,
I think it was Pune.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was
Renshaw and Warner were the two openers. Warner got out and off he went, and then all of a sudden Renshaw's going off with him, and we thought, well, this is what a partnership this is. One's out, they both go off, but in fact it turns out that Renshaw had urgent pooing business to be done. Steve Smith was the captain at the time. He wasn't having any of it. He basically intercepted Renshaw as he was running off and said, "Where are you going?" And so they went back and had a chat with the umpire. Poor Matt Renshaw's, holding it in.
His face during that chat was incredible because he's thinking to himself, "I'm about to shit," while you guys are talking about me having a shit.
Yeah, and basically the umpire said, you can go off, but you can't go off and come back on. You're basically, retired, in urgent need of the lavatory for now. And that's it. So he went off as well. I think Sean Marsh was the next man in. So he came out and battled with Steve Smith for a while. And apparently Renshaw, obviously sprinting to the toilet as soon as he, was given permission to leave. Apparently he slipped over on the way to the toilet as well, which was a nice little extra touch to the moment. But he returned.
Mate, it is hard to bat with spikes, right? Hard to run with spikes, to get to that toilet, because those toilets are not made for men with spikes, right?
No.
So I can understand the slipping. I've never been that urgent to use it. I also think that story was funnier because of Alan Border.
Yes. Oh,
because
yeah. Alan Border got really
this,
shitty. Yeah. No pun intended.
So to speak.
Yeah.
So Alan Border was use that as modern men are not strong anymore, woke snowflakes type of argument and everything else. And it's are we actually serious here? How is him crapping himself and standing on the field and batting with it running down his leg a better system than him going off to the toilet and finishing what he needs to do? It's incredible that any human would think that is a better way of doing it.
Yeah, obviously, he famously told Dean Jones, you stick around here, you basically die out of the field we'll have to get a Queenslander in to replace you. So So I do mention that in the book as well. Border's reaction to it, and I kind of also tied in. I don't know if you remember in the most recent Border Gavaskar series, Gavaskar was saying something about how concussion substitutes, were no good. They you should be able to power through with concussion in your head. And basically, I just redubbed it the Boomer Gavaskar series at that point. It's just absolutely crazy.
Yeah, I've forgotten about that one. Yeah,
Mm.
this one was absolutely huge at the time. I've got a feeling that Brett Lee's band wrote a song about this, which is remarkable.
It is.
I mean, the phrase Brett Lee's band, Six and Out, they were called.
They were called Six and Out.
With Richard
Chikwi,
Gavin Robertson, Richard Chikwi, Brad McNamara,
and the Lee brothers. I think both are brothers.
I think Shane was the singer. I'm
not quite sure exactly who had singing duties.
I've got the CD, by the way.
Of course,
I don't know how many people own it. Like, one day I should put up on eBay, see what I can get for it. I might get Brett to sign it one day. Actually, it might be worth if Richard Chikwi signs it. Might be worth more. But
yes.
They wrote a song about this incident. I'm just going to call it Joe the Cameraman, and if you can take it from there.
Yeah, so essentially, and nobody really noticed this at the time, but a few days after a test in Hobart, I think this was actually the test that Justin Langer and Adam Gilchrist put on a double-century partnership to win.
Might have been, yeah.
But nobody really noticed. And then there was a TV show in Australia called, what was it called? It was like a precursor to the project. It was basically, people sitting around having a chat. And there was Tom Gleisner who spotted this on this show. And he said, have a listen to this. And
was it The Panel?
The Panel, that's the name of it, yes. The Panel. Yep. Good recall there. So, so he said, have a listen to this. And you could hear on the audio from what seemed like a stump mic, but apparently wasn't. Somebody saying, as Scott Muller hurled a ball back in that was a little bit off target, the wicketkeeper couldn't quite gather it. It had to be backed up by a spare fielder. And this mysterious voice said, oh, he can't bowl and he can't throw. And there was scandal erupted. Everyone assumed that it was Shane Warne was the man closest to the stump microphone. The voice sounded not unlike Shane Warne. So there was a little bit of a scandal going on there. Shane Warne immediately denied it. I would never say such a thing about a teammate of mine who will never play for Australia ever again after this test anyway. And so after, a few days of this, it was on a current affair. People got very...
It was like the Zabruta clip, right? Like, I mean, it was everywhere in Australian cricket was showing it. People thought it was commentators, it was an off-mic moment that was picked up. As you said, Shane Warne was one of the main people that people thought it was. So someone else thought it was an umpire who was near the stump. Like, it was all these different people were being blamed for what was just this. And Scott Muller, it felt so bad for him because he hadn't been particularly good and was probably a bit of a reach in picking him. But suddenly his career was in the spotlight in a way that a normal player playing a couple of test matches would never be in, right?
Yeah. And eventually there was, after much investigation, there was a big moment where they said, we've worked out who it is, and they unveiled who it was. And it was a cameraman who had never been picked up on audio ever before. But apparently on this one occasion...
Or since,
he was caught saying he can't bowl and he can't throw. And Joe was his name. Joe Prevatara, I think was his full name. But Joe the cameraman, as he became known. And he became famous, very briefly famous. And lives on in infamy.
And then you have the Joe the cameraman truthers, who believe he stood up for Warnie and all that. Like it's not like it died when the person actually said, "Oh, it was me." And look, whether it was him or not, I don't even know. But
I don't even
the
care.
fact that didn't kill it. Yeah, the fact that didn't kill it, and actually it became, maybe he's been paid off by Shane Warne. It's like, well, what have we got to here? Absolutely. I mean, just a remarkable moment in Australian cricket.
Yeah, I remember not long before Warne died. So this was 2 or 3 years ago, he was on commentary and somehow the topic came around to Joe the cameraman again or Scott Muller. And Warne went on an extended rant. I think Usman Khawaja brought up a half century in the middle of it. Warne didn't care. He was just like, well, it wasn't me. I would never say that. And it wasn't me. And if you think it's me, it wasn't. It was Joe the cameraman. And so he had, another reminder of that moment. So, yeah, God bless Shane Warne.
I mean, to be honest.
And Joe the cameraman.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, Shane Warne would definitely have said that. I don't I'm not saying he did say it. No. I'm just saying he would definitely have said that. Scott Muller, by the way, played 30 first-class games and ended up with an average of 23.
That's
right?
very good.
And his career was basically ended. So by the end of 2000 so he played his last test in 1999, and I think he played first-class cricket the next year after.
Right.
So he had an incredible record, came in and out of the Queensland side, was picked for Australia on a hunch, and kind of that whole moment kind of finished his career. Like, I think like all the energy of his bowling just sort of disappeared afterwards. It's remarkable.
And I think Brett Lee
let's
emerged
go to one
shortly
here.
after too.
Oh.
I was just saying, I think Brett Lee emerged.
Oh
shortly after
no,
as well.
From an Australian point of view, I don't think he was going to play again, but you would have expected him to play a little bit more first-class cricket and stick around. Like, he literally went from being an Australian cricketer to being the joke to being non-existent, like overnight. It's so drastic how quickly those things happen. So we've made fun of some Australian cricketers and commentators, and that's fine and good and what we should be doing. But Daryl Cullinan flipper. Where do you want to start with that? There's, thanks to Ro Belinda, we've got some really good footage of some of the games where he comes out. And I think part of the reason that Daryl Cullinan made this so great is that he had such an arrogant face. He really did look like the sort of person who would be mean to Charlie Chaplin, right? Like, there's a really there's something about Daryl Cullinan where you're just like, and the neatness of him and everything, right? Like, he just looked like one of those sorts of characters, like Billy Zane in Titanic. I've never seen Titanic, but I've seen photos of Billy Zane in Titanic. What I assume Billy Zane looked like in Titanic. Daryl Cullinan had that kind of vibe going on. Not quite as attractive, of course, but but I think Cullinan being Cullinan played into it in a way that other players who were shit against Shane Warne looked like they should be shit against Shane Warne.
Yeah, I think the great thing about Cullinan is against everybody, like, he had a pretty good average. Like, he had a fine career. He's a great batter, and Warne made him look like a clown. Like, you can understand missing the flipper the first 1 or 2 or 3 times even, but he just kept not spotting it ever, and he kept falling into the same trap over and over. Warne would set him up, and then Warne would say, "All right, here comes the flipper." Cullinan would not pick it. It would either hit his stumps or hit his pads. Either way, he was out. It felt like it happened every single time Cullinan came out to bat. Within, a couple of overs, Warne would have him out. And that's not true, but that's what it felt like. It felt like Warne would get him every time. And to the extent when Warne didn't get him, like, I went through the stats. Even when Warne wasn't, flippering him out, Warne was taking catches. Warne caught him a couple of times. He took a caught and bowled off him. It was basically, Warne just had his brain completely fried by that stage. And, famously in the 1999, semi-final, Cullinan's lazing at the other end because Warne's come on to bowl. He's already bowled, this magical spell. Cullinan's just sitting there, and he ends up getting run out by Michael Bevan, of all people. So, it was fantastic relationship between Cullinan and Warne.
There's a moment where, and I want to say this is quite early on in it, where Warne bowls a really rank ball and he hits it for 4, and Cullinan looks back at him as if to go, "I got you."
Yeah.
Right. And then I think Warne bowls another poor ball, and you can see Cullinan pumps himself back up a little bit. He's got the strut going. And then, like, Warne is trying not to show what is clearly why he went on to play poker. Because in Warne's face, he's like, "Are you an idiot? I've bowled 2 short balls in a row in my life before." Yeah. Right? Like, quite clearly, I am setting you up again. You would have to, and then, of course, he just goes straight. I can't remember if that was one of the LBs or the bowl, but he goes straight through him. Yeah. Cullinan's absolutely nowhere. But then the whole psychiatrist thing comes about, where Cullinan goes and sees a psychiatrist. And to be fair to Warne, and Warne was a shit sledger, let's be honest. Not a particularly funny sledger at all. But his work with Cullinan was exceptional, because instead of going in, with the obvious one, the obvious jokes, he starts asking what color the couch was, how much the sessions cost, did he talk about his mum and all that. So, and it's like, to be fair, that's quite high level sledging at that point, because when you first hear what color the couch is, you might not even get what Warne was going at, but then you get the sessions and everything else. It was, again, one of those moments that was kind of bigger than just a normal rivalry, right? Yeah. Like, it was one of those things that in Australian cricket, everyone kind of knew Daryl Cullinan as Warne's victim, even if they weren't massive cricket fans. Yeah. It had kind of transcended, just normal cricket. And to go back to your point from before, CUllinan was a fantastic player. He still ended up averaging 44 in Test cricket. And we've been doing a project at the moment where we're ranking the top 50 batters of all time. CUllinan's record, when you look at advanced metrics, is absolutely fantastic in Test cricket. He's incredibly underrated. For the period that he played in, it was really tough for anyone to score runs, and he was fantastic. And if I wrote that in a book, no one would care because everyone only remembers him as Shane Warne's
He's a clown. Yeah. Yeah. Going back to what you were saying about the psychiatrist thing, I think that was the era when Warne had the terrible goatee as well, which maybe now I'm wondering whether he grew it to look like, Sigmund Freud or something. Maybe that was a whole other level to Warne's mental games.
I would love if that was true.
That's not true, but it would be great if it was.
I would love if Shane Warne knew who Sigmund Freud was.
Yeah.
All right, let's finish off with one I don't know anything about, and I didn't want to read it, but I am interested in this player. You've titled it, I think I've got this right. I've written it down incorrectly here, but I think I've got this right. You titled the chapter "Victor Richardson, Great Big Bastard Search." Is that right? Have I remembered that correctly?
Yes. Yeah. So this is basically this is the sledge. This is my piece on sledging. I couldn't go into some of the too politically incorrect sledges. This is a family friendly book. So some of Ian Botham's more infamous sledges, shall we say, didn't quite make the cut. So this is basically talking about sledging. It's basically which one of you bastards called this bastard a bastard? So it's I think it was Douglas Jardines had been called a bastard by somebody, and there was a complaint, and the England manager came in to investigate, who dared insult the England captain. So, and the joke, of course, is we're all going to call him a bastard. We don't care. You are a bastard, you magnificent bastard.
I mean, again, it's funny with Warwick Armstrong and Victor Richardson how important they become in cricket. Warwick Armstrong sort of lays the template down for the angry Australian captain, and Victor Richardson breeds them.
Yes.
But again, I mean, the amount of times we've heard, Ian Chappell talk about his grandfather and everything else, and the fact that Ian Chappell not only goes on to be a captain himself and have his brother as a captain, but then goes on to kind of explain Australian cricket to us through the 80s and 90s as well. And we kind of take everything that Chappelli says as gospel for a long time. And so from Warwick Armstrong really until Pat Cummins, you could argue, we had that kind of one, and not everyone was a dick. We obviously had Kim Hughes and other people in the room, but we had a lot of those hard, funny bastards, as Australian captains, and Victor Richardson's like kind of like the alpha male in that group, isn't he?
Yeah. So I mean, I had to write about sledging. I just kind of felt that was a nice way to come into it. Let's go all the way back, or a fair way back. Not quite all the way.
Okay, so we've done quite a few funny moments there. I've just picked my favorite. What's your favorite moment that I haven't brought up? What's your favorite funny moment of Australian cricket?
Well, I mean,
it doesn't have to be number one either. No. It doesn't have to be the funniest.
No,
it has to be your favorite.
I do have a soft spot for Watto. I love his big front pad. I love him.
I knew you were going to say Watto.
I love his big front pad. I love him not, just, I'm going to make the tea anyway. I'm probably out, but I'm going to make it. And it's going to come back and say, yeah, you are out, Watto. And then he trudges off sadly. I love everything about Shane Watson. I could have written, multiple thousands of words on Watto as well. Had to stick to the paltry 500, maybe 600 for Watto. But yeah, I do love Watto and his massive front pad. It's beautiful.
Well, I mean, that if you didn't use John Howard's bowling, surely the meme that was made of Watto with the big front pad is, I mean, of modern cricket.
Do you want to know a story about that meme? Do you want to know who
made?
I
want to know every detail about that meme.
You know who made that meme?
Was it you?
It wasn't me. It was Cat Jones.
No.
It was indeed Cat Jones.
It was podcast partner.
Yes. Podcast and life partner.
Yeah, well, I mean, a podcast partner is far more important than a life partner.
Of course, that's true.
So she made, I mean, that, because during the World Cup, Athers mentioned that meme. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that, but yeah.
So during the World Cup, he was talking about Watto. I mean, maybe Watto was on commentary with him. I can't remember.
Almost certainly.
And yeah, and they started talking about the LBW, and he talked about the giant front pad, and he was talking about the image, right? Because there's no other way that you could talk about that. And I also think I think Shane Watson is a perfect example of you and I. If you go back to early cricket with balls, I think every article is about Shane Watson, right? Like when I started, every single article was about him. I remember he would give these incredible press conferences where like all the Shield players would talk to the media, before the season. None of them would get covered. And everything Shane Watson said was so ridiculous and so funny that it would become front page or back page news right around the country, despite the fact he wasn't even always in the team. Like it didn't matter if he was in the team or not.
Yeah.
And like I remember when he was like, he was asked if he wanted to open the batting for Australia when he wasn't an opening batter, and he said yes. And it's like, wait a minute, there's already opening batters in the side. Like now you've made it a little bit awkward.
Yeah.
Like he was so awkward. And now you look at him as a commentator. I would say he's the best young commentator in the world.
He's great.
I love like Samuel Badri. Yeah. Him and Samuel Badri are absolutely incredible. And we're hoping that Ashwin retires and that he'll be a lot of fun as well. But I remember that the World T20. I reckon it was the UAE World T20 when they were when Watto and Dale Steyn were both hired to do the commentary, and I thought, well, Watto, this is not going to go well. And Dale Steyn's going to be incredible. And Dale Steyn, he's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't remember anything he's ever said on commentary. And Watto was just like, I'm just going to drop this nugget and this nugget and this one. And I'm going to talk about this. I'm going to explain the game. Absolutely brilliant. And to go from where he was, it just shows you, it's like the Mark Taylor, Ricky Ponting thing.
Yeah.
It is like, Mark Taylor, genius on the field. We can't wait to get him in the commentary box. Literally has said 7 things in the commentary box that has ever interested me. Ricky Ponting, we all slammed his captaincy and made fun of him. The minute he's been in the commentary, we're just like, dude's a genius. Like, how do we sleep on him? No, Watto is absolutely great. I think that's fine. I think that's a proper way of doing it. How niche did you get in this book? Do we have Nick Maddison's sandwich when he went out on the field with the sandwich in his pocket? Are we at that level of niche?
We don't quite get Nick Maddison's sandwich. We do get a reference to Marnus trying to take the toasty out onto the ground and being told Australian cricketers in this era should not have strange things in their pockets. Take that out of your pocket immediately. So you have the Victorians. You have the Victorians wearing shorts. I do have the Victorians wearing shorts. Yes, a wonderful moment that was. Yes, wonderful season.
So, as I've always said, it's incredible that didn't change domestic cricket. The side of Merv Hughes' calves and lower thighs, I suppose. No, look. For those who don't follow your work, it's always a lot of fun. And I'm sure there's some nuggets in here that will absolutely amuse. I mean, this is like you've become essentially Max Walker.
Well,
have you noticed this?
What an honor that is to become Max Walker. I mean, someone's got to be Max Walker, right? Might as well be me.
I remember we were I was in an antique shop in the country with my wife. And she came, and I showed her all the Max Walker books, and I had about 15 of them. So, I don't know, how to strangle a chicken and how to masturbate a cat, whatever they were all called, right? And I said to her, you just have no idea how big these books were and how every dad in the country had to have them. And you have somehow become the modern Max Walker. Because how many books have you written now? It feels like a lot. It feels like you're churning them out.
This is my 6th, and I'm currently writing my 7th, which will be out next year. So, yeah.
Are we allowed to talk about that, or can we not talk about that?
I should probably just plug this one for now. Well,
take it one book at a time, man. But I just like the idea that one day I'm going to go back to Australia and there's just going to be a Liebke shelf. Yeah, right? Of just like some antique place. It's going to be Walker on one side and you on the other side, and it's just that's going to make me happy. Wait for my Instagram post on that. Thank you very much for joining the podcast. Everyone should go buy the 100 funniest moments of Australian cricket. Have I got the title right?
Yeah. 100 funniest moments of Australian cricket. That's exactly right. By Dan Liebke, John Howard on the cover.
Yeah. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks to the kind folks at FlexiSpot for looking after my office and my butt by sending me their E7 Pro desk that save your favorite desk heights at a touch of a button. You don't have to crank anything. This thing just finds the height that you like and you can work. And their BS12 Pro chair that supports my posterior while I'm recording, well, this ad and all my shows. If you need great desks, especially ones that change heights or the best quality chairs, head on over to FlexiSpot today.